Peter Sweeney from Arrowhead Pride was nice enough to give us a very first projection for the 53-man roster for the Kansas City Chiefs. And what I wanted to do in this video was highlight the offensive side of the football. I have some disagreements, and at a later date, maybe tomorrow, we will go over the defensive side of the football as well. In an article titled Chiefs 53-man roster projection 1.0, Kansas City's training camp is underway in St. Joseph. Right now, here's how we see late August's 53-man roster from Arrowhead Pride by Pete Sweeney. Offense, 25 players. Now, what I want to say before we get into the actual listing of individual players here, what Pete has done is a very conservative projection. Conservative in the way that it is projecting for a very high floor and possibly a very low ceiling. Not very low, because you're talking about as the projections that are out there against my opinions are in the second string. So you're not talking about as much playing time as the starters. The starters are kind of cemented in. It's after that where Pete is picking higher floor, lower ceiling players, where I would probably opt for higher ceiling, lower floor players, because you don't have to have them on the field. And if you get it right, you win the jackpot. If you get it wrong, well, say someone is lost for the season, you can put them on IR and sign a higher floor, lower ceiling player anyway. There are always a few guys out there that have a very moderate floor, but basically no ceiling at all. That is to say that they're not going to perform above and beyond, but they could be on the field and not embarrassing, right? So Pete is picking erring towards on the field and not embarrassing, whereas I would say that there's room on this roster to pick some higher end guys. And they end with this graphic in the article, but I'm going to start with it because I think it is very informative. You have the offense roster by positions by year here. So Chiefs keep 2 quarterbacks most of the time. There's been a couple times they've kept 3, and then that ended in 2018 when they would keep 3 really, because they knew who they had in their starter. Last season, the Chiefs kept but 2 running backs, and they kept Carson Steele as a fullback. They kept 7 wide receivers, 4 tight ends, and 10 offensive linemen, giving the offense an overweight position at 26 players. The even weight position would be 25 because you have 25 offense, 25 defense, and 3 special teamers, long snapper, punter, and kicker. But you do not have that problem with Pete's projection. He is projecting 25. I think they might go with 26 again because there are some numbers that get very, very interesting here. Quarterback 2, Patrick Mahomes, Gardner Minshew, no surprises there. Running backs, he has the Kansas City Chiefs keeping Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Carson Steele, and Brashard Smith. At this point in the process, I would have Elijah Mitchell making the roster over Carson Steele. I think that I think they are likely to go with Carson Steele on the practice squad. Even if Elijah Mitchell decides that he wants to sell lollipops instead of playing professional football and retires, I think that at that point they would go with Pacheco, Hunt, and Smith. I don't really see Carson Steele making this roster because just like we said earlier, I think Carson Steele at this point has a low ceiling but a high floor. I think that it's possible maybe that Carson Steele gets much better than I project. I don't know that we have any reason to believe that he will. You can think he will, right? If that's what you want to think, you can think he will, and maybe he does. I just don't know that we have the evidence there to say that, right? Mitchell has to prove that he has recovered from missing all of 2024, but the potential upside there, the explosive nature of Elijah Mitchell is too great. We looked a couple weeks ago at Elijah Mitchell's broken tackle rate, and it was better than Isaiah Pacheco. It was better even than Kareem Hunt. So I think that the top of the range for Elijah Mitchell is incredible. There is a lot of overlap, however, between Elijah Mitchell and Brashard Smith as far as the athletic profiles are concerned. So if they decide to go with one electric back, one speed back, and then a bruiser, maybe Elijah Mitchell doesn't make the roster. That said, there's a lot of overlap between Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele as far as athletic profile is concerned as well. And Kareem Hunt is obviously the better back in that situation. The one thing that Carson Steele really has over Elijah Mitchell is special teams versatility. Carson Steele played 137 special teams snaps last season. It was not just as a kick returner, right? So maybe Carson Steele offers that over Elijah Mitchell. I am one to believe that they are more likely to just go with their defensive players on special teams and not have to have Carson Steele covering kickoffs, not have to have Carson Steele covering punts. He's not going to be a punt returner, but he was a kick returner. That said, Brashard Smith looks like he could return some kicks too. That said, there are a lot of players on the Chiefs roster that I think could return kicks. Wide receiver, 6 here. This is going to be a tough call. This and offensive line are going to be tough calls for the Kansas City Chiefs because they have a lot of guys that are NFL talent. They might not have all of the high-end talent in the world at the offensive line and wide receiver positions, but they have a lot of guys who are NFL talents. Juju Smith-Schuster is exactly what I was talking about with Pete going with the high floor, low ceiling guys. Very high floor on Juju. Juju is going to be able to step on the field for you, going to be able to run the routes for you. He's going to be able to make the catch when he has to for you. There's not a whole lot going on outside of that. So, is it the right call to have him, Juju Smith-Schuster, over, say, Mac Delana, Elijah Badger, Jason Brownlee, any of these guys? Yes. Probably it is the right call. But the floor with Rice, who's not listed here because of suspension, Hollywood Brown, and Worthy, that floor is high enough to warrant taking a lottery pick into the season. This could be that the wide receiver number 4 spot, who here they have, Pete has listed as Juju Smith-Schuster, is less predictable as it is Jalen Royals as opposed to Juju Smith-Schuster. I think it might be Hollywood Brown as opposed to Juju Smith-Schuster. But if that number 3 spot is just, think about Justin Watson last year. He was on the field. He was able to run the right routes. He was able to get in the defender's way when that is what the play called for. He was able to take a safety deep with him when that was what the play called for. Not a whole lot going on outside of that. In fact, I had not planned to talk about this, so I'm not going to get the numbers right. So I'm not really going to talk about the numbers. Juju Smith-Schuster last year had a monster game after Rashee Rice was injured. In that monster game for Juju Smith-Schuster, Justin Watson played more snaps than any other wide receiver and had 0 catches, right? So that is, I think, closer to who Juju Smith-Schuster is at this point than who Juju Smith-Schuster used to be, and closer to that point than the extreme upside on some of the younger guys that might not make the 53-man roster. I say you take a lottery ticket into the season. This could, by the way, be the season that Nikko Remigio gets to earn the gritty receiver title. If he is on this roster and they have to throw him on the field as opposed to just popping him out there for punt returns, kick returns, he can win. Nikko Remigio can win. It has been a long time. Okay, so Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown. We'll say Juju Smith-Schuster. We'll go with Pete here. Jalen Royals. Sixth wide receiver, Nikko Remigio. It has been a long time since I have been able to look on the field and say, that's the Chiefs' sixth wide receiver? Yeah, I trust him. I think Nikko Remigio is the guy who sells out for everything. So I do trust him to be on the field. I do hope that he gets reps this season. I do think he can make a difference for this team. Not a huge difference, right? But he can be a guy that contributes and keeps the chains moving. Speaking of contributing and keeping the chains moving, Tyquan Thornton is listed as the sixth wide receiver here, would be the seventh once Rashee Rice comes back, depending on what the shuffle is with numbers at that point. Tyquan is not a polished receiver. He's not going to be a 1,000-yard guy, but he could be an X factor for an offense that is hoping to open things up and end up with a 40-yard pop here or there. All of a sudden, you have Patrick Mahomes just uncorking one 40 yards downfield to Tyquan Thornton. I think there's a possibility Tyquan Thornton makes that catch. By the end of Marquez Valdes-Scantling's time in Kansas City, if I knew where MVS was and I saw Mahomes release in that general direction, I just kind of assumed third down was coming. So, again, maybe I have no reason to believe in Tyquan Thornton, but I have the hope and optimism to want to believe in Tyquan Thornton, and maybe this is where he turns his career around. Tight ends, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, Jared Wiley, Jake Brenningstool. This is the pretty standard answer. Some people are putting Jake Brenningstool over Jared Wiley. Some people like Jake Brenningstool so much they're talking about him as tight end number 2. I don't see that yet. I think this looks like a kind of jam-packed position if you are an optimist. Travis Kelce, obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer. Travis Kelce, if you're an optimist, you believe he can get back to that previous form. He could have a 1,000-yard season in what might be his final year in the NFL. Noah Gray is a guy who has been increasingly good throughout his career. Maybe he keeps that up and he has a really good season this year. Jared Wiley's a guy that I'm high on. If you're an optimist, I think you look at his frame, you look at his tools, and you think, yeah, this guy can do it. Jake Brenningstool, you're not looking at him if you're an optimist. You're not looking at him like a UDFA. You're looking at Jake Brenningstool as a guy who somehow fell through the cracks. So if you're an optimist, this looks like a really good position group, one that Brett Veach has been trying to get right on a 4 deep for a few years now. But let me temper you. These are the tight ends by snap count last season. Travis Kelce, 940. Noah Gray, 664. Then you had Jared Wiley at 94, who didn't play after October. Then you had at 68 Peyton Hendershot, 40 Jody Fortson, who that still slips my mind. Fifth, you have Anthony Firkser. Anthony Firkser? He hardly knows her. Then you have Baylor Cupp at 6. Everyone's going to get tired of that joke, but I never will. So if you're looking at that, you have Travis Kelce. If you project those same numbers onto this season, Travis Kelce at 940, Noah Gray at 664. Jared Wiley was replaced more or less with Peyton Hendershot kind of in the offensive lineup. So you're looking at 150 snaps, Jared Wiley, and then Jake Brenningstool, we'll say 40. So be excited about Jake Brenningstool all you want. I am too. I think it's going to be a long shot for him to make much of a difference this season. Next season, though, if Travis Kelce retires, it is a brawl for it all at the tight end position. Then we have the offensive line. And this is where I am super torn with this projection. So you have left to right, left tackle Josh Simmons, left guard Kingsley Suamataia, center Creed Humphrey, right guard Trey Smith, right tackle Jawan Taylor. That is the right answer at this point, right? Jalen Moore is the swing tackle. Hunter Nourzad at your backup guard position. Mike Caliendo at your backup center position. And then you have Wanya Morris, who is listed as the next man up, I guess. Here's the thing. If I were the GM, and I'm only third string GM right now, so I'm not going to get my shot called anytime soon, Mike Caliendo would be off and CJ Hanson would be on. Simmons and Taylor are listed as starters here, but look for Jalen Moore to make his presence known as Taylor is starting the season on the PUP list. That's 3 tackles. Josh Simmons, Jawan Taylor, Jalen Moore, however you order them, whatever you want. Who do you have next in the pecking order? For offensive tackle, who do you have next in the pecking order? Kingsley Suamataia or Wanya Morris? I think that it is a perfectly reasonable answer to say that Kingsley Suamataia is the starting offensive guard and the 4th string tackle. He did enough to warrant that, at which case you have Wanya Morris, who is experienced, and I think would have some trade value. If he's buried at the 5th offensive tackle spot, then I think you go ahead and you make that move. Why would you say that with Kingsley Suamataia starting at left guard? Well, you can move Kingsley Suamataia. Say Josh Simmons retires mid-season to pursue his academic career. All of a sudden you have Kingsley Suamataia that you put at left tackle, and you're pretty comfortable, I think, with Hunter Nourzad or Mike Caliendo, if that's how you want to do it, at the guard position. Maybe you slide Trey Smith. However you do it, that's how you do it, right? I think you were more comfortable with Kingsley Suamataia possibly on the field than Wanya Morris. But Wanya is a legitimate NFL player. So what am I talking about with why would I rather have CJ Hanson than Mike Caliendo? Here's CJ Hanson's RAS score, 9.86 overall, 6'5", 300 pounds. Now, hopefully he has added a little bit of weight on there, but still 6'5", 300 it's certainly tall enough, and it is good enough weight. You're looking at a guy who has a 33.5 inch. So, okay, I did this wrong. 6'5", 300 compared to 6'4", 300. The edge goes to CJ Hanson. 33.5 inch vert compared to 28.5 inch vert. The edge goes to CJ Hanson. 9'7" broad jump compared to 8'9" inch broad jump. Nearly a foot of difference there. The edge goes to CJ Hanson. A 5-second flat 40-yard dash compared to a 5.36 40-yard dash. The edge goes to CJ Hanson. CJ Hanson did not do the agility drills, and his 40-yard dash was done via hand time at a pro day, so these numbers might not be correct. But if they are, you're looking at a guy who has a 1.76 10-yard split compared to a 1.79 10-yard split for a pulling guard that matters. So you're looking at a guy in CJ Hanson who ticks all of the boxes. 9 3/4 inch hands, or 9 3/8 inch hands versus 9.5. That edge goes to Caliendo. 30.8 inch arms compared to 32 3/8 inch arms. That edge goes to CJ Hanson as well. That is why I would have CJ Hanson over Mike Caliendo, despite the fact that Mike Caliendo has playing time in the NFL. CJ Hanson played a handful of snaps last season and a handful of special team snaps. That said, the Chiefs decided to keep him on the 53 all season long. That is for a reason. I think it's positive. So CJ Hanson was a guy who had a lot of momentum heading into the draft. There were a lot of people who thought he could be a 5th round pick. He ended up falling to the 7th for the Kansas City Chiefs to snatch him up there. Could have been a 5th round pick because of this athleticism. He was not picked there. He was picked late by the Chiefs. That said, all of those same teams that scouted him And maybe they wanted him in the 5th, 6th, or 7th, but they had other pressing needs at corner, other pressing needs at linebacker, other pressing needs at left out. All of these positions they had to go with instead of right guard, instead of left guard. And so they passed on him. But if they had a chance to snag him for free on the waiver wire, probably they would have done it. So I think that is why he ended up being carried on the season, on the 53 all season for the Chiefs. By the opposite measure, Mike Caliendo was a guy who, leading into his final collegiate season, people kind of thought, hey, this is going to be a guy who, if he shows a couple things, could get drafted. He didn't grow a whole lot in his final season, and then he tested with 30-inch arms, sub 31-inch arms, and he fell out of the draft. The momentum was going the wrong way for Caliendo, the right way for Hanson, and so I don't think you can slip CJ Hanson onto your practice squad. I think that if you cut him and you try to have him pass through the waiver wire, someone is definitely going to claim him. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. The Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. I've dropped a video every day for over 2 years, 2.5 years now. So hit that subscribe button, stick around for more. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.